And the Trump administration used legal powers granted in 18th century law to deport hundreds of alleged gang members to El Salvador. That is despite an order from a federal court for the government to stop using what is the Alien Enemies Act. President Trump was asked about it on Sunday. This is what he had to say.
I don't know. You have to speak to the lawyers about that.
Are you planning to do more deportations?
I can tell you this. These were bad people. That was a bad group of, as I say, hombres.
Well, the White House saying the administration did not violate the judge's order because, and that the deportees had already left the United States by the time that the order was made. I want to break this down. CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig joining us now live. And it's good to have you because it's important that we sort of drill down on this. The judge, as I understand it, verbally ordering any planes in the air carrying migrants to turn back to the United States. Ellie, we have the White House press secretary saying the following: a single judge in a single city cannot direct the movements of an aircraft carrier full of foreign alien terrorists who were physically expelled from U.S. soil. So where does this leave the Trump administration? Can it bypass these orders?
Well, so the biggest question here, Becky, is exactly that. Did the Trump administration knowingly defy a specific order from a judge? So let's break this down because the details and the timing are really important here. Now, there was a hearing held in court on Saturday, and at around 6:49 p.m. on Saturday, a judge named James Boasberg, a federal judge in Washington, D.C., said essentially, this is all getting put on hold, do not deport anybody, and turn around any flights that are in the air. Then about a half hour after that, a written document to the same effect hit the docket sheet. A written order was issued. But really what matters is when the judge says it in court. Take it from me. I've been in court plenty of times. And now the key question is, where were those planes at those key moments? If they were still grounded in the United States, then yes, the Trump administration defied an order from the judge. If they were already airborne, then you get into a little bit of a gray area about whether they would still be subject to U.S. jurisdiction. It would matter what airspace they were in. If, on the far other hand, they had already landed in a foreign country, then it would have been too late to really tell them to turn around. So we need to see how these exact details play out. I expect the judge, wouldn't surprise me if it's in a few hours today, demands a sort of minute-by-minute breakdown of who knew what when and where were those planes when.
So this Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 times before, all during war times, War of 1812 and World War I and II, as I understand it. Now, can you explain how or why it is that the Trump administration believe that they can deport people under this act?
Yeah, so separate and apart from the question of whether they defied a court order, there's the substantive question of, does this law apply properly to what the Trump administration was trying to do? Now, that law, the Alien Enemies Act, says that the president can deport non-citizens, so that would include people who are here illegally, people who are here on visas, people who are green card holders, legal permanent residents. But the president can deport non-citizens in either of 2 scenarios. One, if there's a declared war with the foreign country. Obviously, that's not the case. We don't have any declared wars right now. Number 2, and this is the one the Trump administration is relying on, is if there is an invasion or enemy incursion by a foreign government. Now, the Trump administration has 2 leaps to make there. First, they argue that the presence of this gang, Tren de Agua, in the United States is the same as an invasion or incursion because they're out there committing crimes. The second leap I think they have to convince a judge of is that the actions of this gang are the same as the actions of the Venezuelan government. The Trump administration argues they're aligned and they're sort of embedded in the corrupt Venezuelan government. I think both of those claims are sort of uphill climbs in court. And eventually, and this is why the judge put this temporarily on hold, this judge, initially at least, is not buying those arguments. Look, the law is very broad. It gives the president very broad powers. And even within that, though, I think the Trump administration is pushing the outer boundaries of a reasonable interpretation here.
Right, let's be quite clear about this. The pace of Trump's deportations have been fairly similar to Biden's administration. The number of removal flights under Trump tracks closely with the former president's in 2024. President Trump has just been more vocal about this immigration crackdown. He was very vocal about it in promising it during his campaign. He says he was elected on this, including an immigration ASMR video posted that has sparked a backlash. Has Donald Trump spotlighting these cases helped or hindered the situation or his case?
Well, I imagine it's popular politically that people see him rounding up gang members, allegedly violent gang members, and sending them out of the country. I mean, it certainly was one of the lead issues that Donald Trump campaigned and was elected on. It's really important, though, to understand a couple things here. First of all, our laws do, some of them are centuries old, do give the president, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anyone else, very broad authority within the immigration spectrum. The other thing to keep in mind is these are not criminal cases, and we in the United States are very used to, in a criminal case, things are done above board, they're done methodically, there are public hearings, there are indictments that we can all read, there are trials that are guaranteed to be public. We get to see every phase of it as it plays out. But in the immigration context, that is not the case. A lot more can happen behind the scenes, undercover, outside of the public view. So we're talking about two very different scenarios here.
Donald Trump has been pushing the courts in the States on many issues, not only on immigration. So question to you, with all of your experience, as you see what is going on in these first, more than 60-odd days now, how do the courts keep the executive and Donald Trump in check?
Yeah, this is why it's so important, first of all, that court orders be obeyed and that we don't get into the realm of where the executive branch, the president, is defying court orders, because if that happens, then we are lost. But what we've seen, you're right, Becky, time and again throughout the first 2 months of this administration is pushing the outer boundaries of law. We just talked about one example with immigration enforcement. There's another example with birthright citizenship, which goes back to 1868, says that any person born or naturalized in the United States is automatically a citizen. Trump is challenging that. We've seen a lot of these in what Elon Musk and Doge is doing, in the way they're firing federal employees, in the way they're trying to withhold money. And we're seeing these cases play out on a one-by-one basis in the courts. And sometimes, by the way, the Trump administration wins. I think more often than not, they've lost. But there have been times when courts, including Democratic appointed judges, have looked at the Trump administration's actions and said, that's okay. But there have been more times when judges, and I would include both Democratic and Republican appointed judges, have said, no, that crosses the line. That's illegal. Now, I think it's important, though, when we hear this phrase constitutional crisis. In my view, if you're a presidential administration and you're taking aggressive readings on the law or arguing for maybe unpopular interpretations of the law, that's all within the realm of fair play. You go into court, maybe you win, maybe you lose. But to me, where we get into real trouble is if there is open, willing defiance of a court order. People use this phrase constitutional crisis. I hesitate to use that phrase, but if we get into open defiance, then we are there.